During a time of crisis, we see three things happen. The first is denial. People don't want to believe that a crisis is surrounding us. They don't believe that the world is really going to change dramatically. And they really think that there's something that's going to happen soon that's going to bring their world from this time of crisis back into the one that's really familiar with them. These are the people who are walking around in denial, and they are the ones who are at the greatest risk of having their entire world flattened, go out of business, lose all of their customers, whatever it may be. These are the people who are the most impacted by a time of crisis. Now, the second group of people are in paralysis. They are so afraid of what's going on. There's so much chaos. There's so much change. They don't know how to manage it. They don't have processes in place. They don't have a strong leadership team. These are the ones who are just sitting there and letting the outside world happen to them. They also are at a tremendous risk for losing everything that they've invested in their organization, in their employees, and in their company. The third group are the ones who have vision. These are the people, these are the companies and the leaders and the employees who understand that a crisis is an opportunity to make tremendous change and to drive innovation in their organization, in the industries that they serve, in how they serve their customers, and even potentially the products and services that they deliver. Now, there's a big difference in these visionaries between just surviving and moving into thriving. And that's what they are really, really great at, is understanding how to make that shift. Now, they're able to do this because they understand that as the pendulum swings, it can easily turn into a wrecking ball if they don't have the processes and the frameworks in place to guide their employees and their customers and their stakeholders through this time of change and to be able to take advantage of a crisis to drive innovation. The way that they're able to take advantage of all of this time is that they use a framework that's based on ideas. Now, this isn't your typical innovation idea type of situation. This is when they're looking at how do we take the situation that we're in, create structure around it that gives people a sense of control and a focus, and then how to start to move through it. This framework of ideas starts with insights. It moves to definition, then examination, action, and schedules. Let's take a look at the first step, insights. With insights, these visionaries understand that everyone contributes to innovation. In a typical organization, only about 10% of the employee population contributes to innovation. This can be a specific innovation group, it could be research and development, but what they understand is that when you bring in the other 90% of the employee population, to see potential, to see opportunities for change, to bring more ideas to the table. Why we want to make sure that we focus on insights from everybody within the organization is because when you only have a small group of people involved, or a group of people that essentially has the same type of experience and background, is that you create monochromatic teams. Teams that all think the same way, teams that solve problems the same way. And what we're looking at is that when you have monochromatic teams, you also end up with monochromatic ideas. And this is a time when you need to look at what are all the potential opportunities that we have to solve problems and to do things differently in order to address the change that's constantly going on during a time of crisis. In insights, we also understand that during this time, we need to have a wide swath of perspectives. It's really important to let people bring their points of view to the table. Help them understand that their power really lies in their natural ability to solve problems in ways that are different from how other people show up on the team. This is critical because we are truly going to be able to take advantage of innovation during a time of crisis. We have to make sure that we democratize innovation. We have to make it available to everyone and have everybody participate in it if we're going to be successful. Democratizing innovation is the key to the step that's insights. The second thing that we're looking at is definition. how is it that we start to define the specific objectives that we're looking to accomplish? So this helps organizations and leaders within them set priorities. There is so much that can be done. And back to even with a visionary group, there are people who feel like they are in chaos, that they're paralyzed. But when you're able to define and clearly articulate your priorities for your objectives and what it is that is important to accomplish right now, you give everyone a very clear focus and you point them all in the same direction so everybody has the same thing that they're pursuing. The ability to point everyone's energies in the same direction is how we create focus, how we give people a sense of control for where they spend their time, how they spend their time, where they invest money, where it is that they're looking to make improvements, and most of all, their own personal energy. When we're in a time of crisis, it is incredibly emotionally draining. There's the stress of having to perform under tight deadlines. There's the stress of not knowing what's happening and where the future is going to go. Giving people specific objectives and helping them understand where to focus their time and energy helps deal with all of this and helps them be more productive when they're on the job and helps free them up to be able to allow those new ideas to come to the table. Being able to establish those priorities and have clear-cut objectives also eliminates waste, it gets rid of inefficiencies, and perhaps most important, it rallies teams to a higher performance. Our next step, our third step, is examination. What we want to do here is have a close examination of everybody's roles and responsibilities so we understand who's responsible for what during this time of crisis. Now, the reason that this is so important is because we need to have clear-cut guidelines about who's responsible for what. Because in some situations, some employees will need to step up. They'll need to take on a greater amount of responsibility than they have in the past. Some will need to share responsibilities and perhaps split an area into two or share it with somebody else. And others will need to start to step back and let others lead. It is really important to establish these clear-cut responsibilities so that we understand who's responsible for what, and then we take that next step and we communicate it to every employee within the organization. What we're looking at with this examination step is to clearly define the responsibilities that everybody has within an organization. This helps us be more proactive, productive, and have greater impact. These first three steps lead to the most important next step, and that is action. What we're doing with action is making it clear that in a crisis, we can't just sit and wait for things to happen to us. When we have a vision, we need to move forward. We need to begin to build that momentum, and we need to help people understand that the ultimate outcome of innovation is change and something that we can measure, something that we can show that we've made progress. When we look at the action step, what we're taking into consideration is that action and innovation is about testing, about trying new things, in smart ways, learning how they work, and then refining the outcomes. What we want to make sure that we don't do is get too hung up with perfection. The action step is about progress, not just perfection. A time of crisis makes things happen quickly. Oftentimes, people are more willing to not be as rigid about their control process. Sometimes we can be able to get things through legal much faster. We get budgets approved. People are willing to take a look and say, yes, I give this my support. Now let's see what that next step might look like. When we're looking at action, what we are really needing to take advantage of is that a time of crisis is when employees, when customers, when everybody is involved, expects change. So what we have to be able to do is take advantage of that, of people's willingness to change, that they're looking at how can we take on more of what needs to happen quickly and, inevitably, because it's the perfect time to take these big steps forward and help move these big milestones, these changes that you've been working on for a long period of time and haven't been able to make progress. Every organization, every leader, every innovator who's trying to do something better, to do something broader and have a bigger impact, understands that the biggest hurdle that they have at any time is change. So when you can take advantage of a crisis, when people are already in that mental state and saying, I know change is going to happen, I'm just waiting to see what it looks like. When you are that visionary kind of leader, you are able to usher in the change that people are waiting for and give them a sense of control because they now see I have a path forward and I understand what next looks like. Now, our last step is looking at schedules. In our last step, we talked about action. People expect action, but what we also have to look at are outcomes, and that's where schedules come into play. Now, when we look at schedules, crisis drives clarity about the need to change. So what we need to do is establish a common sense of urgency by putting a timetable, a time frame around the change that's going to happen. This gives people room to breathe while they're focusing on what to deliver, because they don't have to spend that time and energy saying, when is this due? When do we have to get this done? They understand that everybody is on the same page about when work has to be delivered. Innovation is about putting ideas into action so that you can actually see results. When we look at focusing on schedules, what we're looking at is it's easier to do. It's easier to put the schedules in place and the timetables once you've clearly defined your objectives and people understand what it is that they're working toward. During this time of crisis that we're in with the coronavirus, with COVID-19, leaders underestimate the risk of not taking any action. We've actually seen how the unwillingness to take action has caused many problems within organizations who had been waiting to take advantage of things like digital transformation, from looking at what does that digital customer experience look like. They're really caught behind the curve, and they are the ones who are really going to struggle even to survive, much less thrive like the visionary leaders that we know about with innovation. Now, if you want better ideas at any time, but particularly during a time of crisis, what you have to start with is more ideas. When you look at more ideas, what we have to look at is it can't come from still a small group of people within an organization. Those who may have that some sort of specific expertise about innovation, whether they're researchers, developers, design thinkers, however you typically define those innovators within your organization. What we need to look at is how do we get more ideas? Because before you can get to better ideas, you have to start with more ideas. And how we do that is that we start to open up who it is that we accept ideas from. Because innovation is all about solving problems that we haven't realized are problems before, and particularly in a time of crisis. The coronavirus has unveiled these weaknesses in our organization, in industries, in markets that we weren't able to see before. But now, right now, is our opportunity to drive big innovation during this time of crisis in order to strengthen those leaders, to strengthen your company and your organization to be higher performance once we are coming out of this crisis. I'm Carla Johnson. If you'd like to continue the conversation, I'd love to hear from you. But this is your opportunity to stand above all of your competitors, to be that visionary, and to take advantage of all of the opportunities with innovation during this time of crisis.